Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, a very good afternoon to you all. My name is Tomas Häyry, and I'm the team leader of the EnergyVaasa team. And then I also have a side job as a mayor for the city of Vaasa. It's my great pleasure to invite you all here to this webinar this afternoon, where we'll be talking about sustainable battery solutions from Finland and the Nordics. And I especially want to wish our very esteemed speakers welcome. Thank you for attending this webinar and sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon. Dear audience, when we started the EnergyVaasa journey in December in 2016, we quite quickly started to look into the whole battery value chain. We studied battery minerals, chemicals, precursors, active cathode material, anode material, cell production, battery pack assembly, and downstream applications. And we quite quickly came to the conclusion that we have a great competitive edge here in Finland and also in the whole of Nordics. The main driver for our work so far has been that we saw that we have the ability here to manufacture the most sustainable batteries in the world, and that the demand for such sustainable produced batteries is growing exponentially. So we started to look for a suitable site for battery production here in our region and found an excellent greenfield area just east of the airport here in Vaasa. And on this area, as you see on the picture, we can offer an abundance of green energy. We can offer 320 hectares of zoned plots for chemical industry, which means we can offer a possibility for a vertical integration in the battery material and cell producing process. We can also offer great logistical possibilities for all forms of transport, as it's beside the airport, a few kilometers to the harbor, the main road network just adjacent to it, and also the railroad just adjacent to it. But we also see that in addition to this, we see a lot of synergies with all the actors in the value chain, both here in Finland and also in the whole of the Nordic battery belt. Today, you will get a good insight in battery strategy, the building of a sustainable battery value chain here in Finland, how we proceed towards or on a road towards carbon neutral logistics. And this is very important when you look at the whole sustainability of the battery production. We will also get a good perspective from the EU, and we will get a hands-on insight from those who will make the battery materials and battery cells of the future. That is from Johnson Matthey and FREYR Battery. Dear friends, without due notice, I don't want to prolong this introduction. It's my pleasure to hand over to our excellent moderator this afternoon. Paula Erkkilä is the director of the Ostrobothnia Chamber of Commerce. Paula, the floor is yours. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Tomas. Good afternoon to all and welcome to this EnergyVaasa webinar. My name is Paula Erkkilä and I will be your host and moderator this afternoon. Like Tomas said, in the west coast of Finland, we have a deep roots in energy and chemical industry. We have high quality academic and industry related research and development, green energy and minerals, a whole package and ecosystem which is serving and supporting the battery industry. Our goal this afternoon is to promote Finnish battery expertise, to put Finland on world's battery map. And we certainly should be there with other Nordic countries. In this afternoon, we will be discussing building tomorrow's green batteries and what it requires. We have 6 extremely interesting and hot topics. This webinar is organized by Vaasa Region Development Company VASEC, Technology Center Merinova, the Regional Council of Ostrobotnia, the University of Vaasa, the Center for Economic Development, Transport and Environment, and Ostrobotnia Chamber of Commerce. All these in close operation with a dozen other strong players in region's energy cluster. I want to thank all the organizers. And I'm so happy that there are so many of you there online from so many countries. Before we start, I will also remind you that the chat is open. We will follow the discussions on the chat, and if there comes out interesting questions and comments to our speakers, and we have enough time, I will pick some of those immediately after the presentations. But now we are ready to rock and roll. I hope our first speaker is too. Thore Sekkenes is a Programme Director for European Battery Alliance at InnoEnergy Scandinavia. What are sustainability goals and European battery strategy? Let him tell us more about these issues. Please, Thore, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Paula, and for that introduction, and also for letting us at EBA, the European Battery Alliance, talk at this very important webinar. So, I have a presentation. Can I have the next page, please? There we go. So I lead this the industrial branch of EBA, the European Battery Alliance, in short EBA 250. This is an open network created back in 2017. And in short, our purpose is to make Europe the winner when it comes to the battery industry. We started out with virtually nothing. 5 years ago, there was very little battery activity in Europe, as I think you know. Today, the industrial EBA network that we at EIT, InnoEnergy, coordinate consists of 700 members, and Europe has become the global hotspot when it comes to investment along the battery value chain. I will, in this presentation, talk about how we did this or are doing it. We're not finished yet. Can I have the next slide, please? So this slide talks about the importance of batteries. Today, most people agree that batteries is a key cornerstone for transforming mobility and energy systems to meet the ambitious United Nations requirements, the CO2 and sustainability goals. Batteries contribute to cutting greenhouse gases in many sectors, and this is, of course, key to the Green Deal. In this transition, however, in this transition to an electrified society, we cannot simply replace one dirty technology with another. Or in other words, if you apply that to the transport sector, we cannot drive around in a clean car with no exhaust pipe on it if we don't have a clean, if it has a dirty battery. The sustainable batteries made here in Europe will not only be an important way of achieving our climate goals, but it also has to be an important driver for the EU industrial competitiveness. If it isn't, we won't be doing it for very long. So it has to be sustainable in that sense as well. Can I have the next slide, please? So many of you, I start again. From the very beginning, back in 2016, well, there were activities before that as well, but in 2016, sustainability was key. It was a key word. How did it start? Many of you listening today, I happen to know that a lot of you listening today, you were actually key stakeholders and you helped us to define the 49 action items, actions that we had to do across the whole value chain, in order to build this sustainable yet competitive European battery industry. 18 of these requirements, we talk of the 18 prioritized requirements, they were, as I said, prioritized. And guess what? Sustainability and an updated regulatory framework was, of course, key in this. When you get the slides, you will be able to see that these 18 goals are listed on this page. Most of these actions, such as the CO2 footprint, battery passport, requirements on recycling, responsible sourcing, and so on, all went into the battery regulation and are now part of it. Next page, please. So taking a helicopter view on the regulatory framework, batteries as an enabler for the green transition, that was postulated or acknowledged in the Green Deal. The battery action plan that I just talked about on the previous slide is supported by the Green Deal. It's mentioned in there. And the Green Deal also stated that that the plan to make this battery regulation come out in 2020. This new legislature on batteries came out in December last year as promised. The recently launched recovery plan reconfirms the importance of batteries as a key storage technology. In summary, the supportive regulatory framework is in place for batteries. In fact, as one of the first products that really have such a regulatory framework around it. Next page, please. This slide shows some of all the actions that are put in place in the forms of targets, incentives, penalties, and so on. As an example, many of the EU member states have introduced bans on on the sales of fossil fuel cars. Many of them from 2030. In the UK, they have gone further than that. Also, heavier vehicles, 3.5 to 26 ton vehicles, are banned from 2035, and above 26 tons are banned from 2040, as an example. Next slide, please. So is this working? Well, we haven't been to the future yet, so we can't tell. But these recent headings in the press indicate that all major car manufacturers, or vehicle manufacturers, I should say, they have in fact made up their mind and they're going electric and leaving the internal combustion engine, the ICE, behind altogether. If you test yourself and look through a newspaper today or when you want, try to find an advertisement for a car that is not electric. It's actually quite difficult. It's still possible, but it's quite difficult. So things have changed. One can say that the ICE age is over. Next page, please. When it comes to the segment of the value chain that is the factories that build the batteries, we count at EBA, we count to almost 50 factories in operation or planned. Most of them are only in planning or construction phase, but still it's happening. If all of this happens to the time plans given, then we will have about 400 gigawatt hours in 2025 and 850 in 2030 of EU capacity installed to make batteries. Not all of these cases are listed on this slide. This is quite impressive considering that 4 or 5 years ago there was nothing. Another observation or deduction from this slide is that we need raw materials to feed all these factories, and we need lots of it. Raw materials and active materials for the battery cell plants will be absolutely crucial. I'll come back to this. Next slide, please. So, are we done yet? Well, the answer is no, we're not. This slide shows the foreseen European capacity over the battery industry value chain. You see at the top of the slide, you see the value chain with the different segments, and and the demand is these two dotted lines across the page that indicates the predicted demand in 2025 and 30. The blue columns indicate the foreseen capacity for 2025 and 2030 that Europe will have. And analyzing this picture, you will see that it is only in the battery manufacturing and the application and integration segments of the value chain that we actually get close with the European installed or planned to be installed capacity. When it comes to upstream, meaning mining and refining into active materials, Europe is very far behind the expected demand. So there is a big room for improvement. The same goes for recycling at the very end of the value chain. Also, this situation is complicated by the fact that the two horizontal lines, they keep going upwards. I have corrected this slide 2 times in the last 3 months. To put this in a positive context, this means that there is an enormous potential for more investments and industrial activity in these segments. I think you will agree with me that Finland can make a big difference and are already doing so, in fact. But we'll come back to that in a moment. Next page, please. So the challenge then, I've touched upon it several times. How do we make sustainable batteries? The battery in an EV accounts for the biggest part of the CO2 emission in making that vehicle. This is no secret. As a rule of thumb, you can say that to make a battery with 1 kilowatt hour of capacity, you actually need more than 100 kilowatt hours of energy to make it. So that energy better be green, if you understand what I mean. So the challenge is to make the battery as sustainable as ever possible in every step of the value chain. Sustainably produced raw materials is a crucial factor, of course, but also renewable energy to produce the battery itself. Next slide, please. This webinar is, however good, it's slightly too short to go into detail on how to exactly do that, but I would like to mention the headings at least of what we need to talk about. Raw materials, sustainable, ethical, and transparent supply chains. No secrets there. On the battery manufacturing, sustainable manufacturing and circular design. Here, here also on raw materials, the green energy is very important, and in general, recycling and reuse, green transport and shipping, more or less obvious. Next slide, please. So this slide details a little bit about the EU battery regulation. The measures in the proposed battery regulation supports this development that I'm asking for. If you go into detail of what is in the new EU battery regulation, you will find that all of the good things that I have touched upon is in there. The main objective for doing this are, I can group it in three. Strengthening the internal market by ensuring a level playing field through a common set of rules. Anyone playing on the European in Europe needs to play by the same rules. Promoting a circular economy and more resilient supply chains, including recycling, very important. and overall this reducing negative environmental and social impact throughout the battery life cycle. Yes, please go to the next page. Some words about the Nordics. So what can we here in the northern end of Europe contribute to this? How can we do that? Well, I think I've hinted it already. We are very well positioned for a number of reasons. We have mining tradition and knowledge. We have access to raw materials. We have green and relatively inexpensive energy, renewable energy. We have a remarkably skilled and innovative workforce. And above all this, we have a stable industrial environment with a large willingness to invest. Just to mention a few, that's a very good start. Not all regions and countries, member states have this. Going to the next slide, please. Here on this slide, we've focused on the industrial projects in the Nordics. I'm sure you will be happy to see that a lot of these small dots, they are in Finland, in fact. Development of sustainable, transparent, and competitive, not to forget, supply chain is a prerequisite to sustain the continued market growth that we want here in Europe. The Nordic countries are, I repeat, the Nordic countries are very well positioned to offer a very large number of industrial opportunities and possibilities for cooperation among the players. Next slide, please. So, in summary, back in 2017, there was very little talk about green batteries. It was starting, but not very popular. There was no regulatory framework available at that time. Well, there was something that was outdated and not applicable. And sustainability and recycling and that sort of thing, that was stuff that some of you guys as key stakeholders in EBA and we promoted, but it wasn't very big back then. Now, the current status is that batteries is clearly recognized as a cornerstone for the green transition. I don't think many will disagree with that. The regulatory framework is in place, and sustainability is even more than before a key word for what we're trying to do. The regulatory framework needs to be and is supportive and inclusive, and it also allows for future developments. We're not with the final technology yet. We will take further steps, and the regulatory framework needs to englobe that as well. That's my summary, but I'd like to say two more things. So please switch to the last slide. For those interested in the Nordic perspective that I just focused on, there is two pieces of information. Business Sweden, together with Business Finland and Innovation Norge, have very recently released a report on highlighting the very advantages of the Nordic countries. I recommend reading through this report. Also, second piece of information, during this autumn, the above mentioned organizations and ourselves, you see them on the page, we are organizing 4 webinars on the Nordics. Finland is out first on the 14th of October, and then there's one session for each country, and then there is a wrap-up after that. With that, my presentation is over, and I thank you very much for your attention. And back to you, Paula.
Thank you, Thore, for this fascinating presentation. Before I let you go, I have one question for you. Now, when the Nordic countries are leading the way of developing sustainable battery value chain, How do you see the rest of the world will react?
Well, first, a word of caution. There are a lot of good activities going outside the Nordics. I have the privilege of knowing about a lot of these, and they are in fact impressive. But you're quite correct. We have good conditions, and we are taking a very prominent position. I would say that if I should mention three clusters of when it comes to the battery industry, the Nordics is definitely one. There's one in Germany, and I think I would like to place one in the Eastern Europe as well. But we are definitely one of those clusters. Now, how is the rest of Europe going to react? Well, I think I refrain from answering that on a political level, because then I get messed up in stuff where I don't want to be. But when it comes to the industry, all I see is cooperation across borders, across companies, across segments in the value chain. And if we, now coming back to answering your question, if we here in the Nordics could go in the front of this and lead by example and introducing sustainability, CO2 footprints, etc., then I think we have an important role to have that leadership for others to follow. If that is followed, then we will have done a very big effort for Europe and the planet we want to live on.
Thank you so much. We will continue program. Next, we will dig deeper into national level. Finland has many advantages in battery production. Mr. Matti Hietanen is a CEO at Finnish Minerals Group, and he will speak about building sustainable battery value chain in Finland. Matti, welcome.
Thank you, Paula, and also thank you, Thore, for the good and very interesting presentation. I think that it's fair to say that it's my true pleasure to be here today and speak about the sustainable battery value chain, as it is in the core of our operations and in the core of our strategy. But first, I will give you a glimpse of ourselves. What is Finnish Minerals Group all about? That is Suomen malmijalostus in Finnish. So in the next slide, or actually one slide more, we first of all have our new strategy. We have updated it actually just a couple of weeks ago. So this is a brand new fine-tuned version. And then still the kind of like a starting point is that we act here as a government's holding and development company for the Finnish mining industry and for the Finnish battery value chain. That is unchanged, and basically the kind of like a basic idea here is to maximize the value of Finnish minerals and to do it in a responsible and sustainable way. We have three key objectives, strategic objectives in our strategy. So first of all, we want to generate impact and return through our investments, and we also want to create and utilize new innovative business opportunities. And then thirdly, we want to build sustainable battery value chain. So just like I said, the topic of today is clearly in the core of our DNA. And basically, I think that we can summarize all of this with our new vision. That is, we provide materials for climate neutrality, and that basically means that we clearly see that raw materials and refined materials, different type of intermediates, are needed for energy transition, needed for mitigation of climate change, and then we are actually, as basically Thore already explained, we are kind of like facing bottlenecks here in the supply chain, and we want to play our role producing these materials. And then on the next slide, we have our current assets, our current asset portfolio, and obviously Terrafame is the largest asset that we currently have, and the only one that is operational today. Terrafame is now in the middle of a ramp up of battery chemicals production. We are super excited about that. So especially when we talk about nickel sulfate, Terrafame will be a major player because basically Terrafame's production capacity is the largest globally for nickel sulfate, which is the key ingredient for precursor production later in the value chain. Then especially from Vaasa region's perspective, I'm sure that Keliber is a project that is interesting. So Keliber is a lithium project aiming to start production of lithium hydroxide in 2024. And then we also have Sookli in our portfolio. Sookli is a phosphate project. It also contains, for example, rare earth elements. And you might first think that how phosphate project fits this portfolio, but if we take a closer look, we obviously can recognize that phosphate is also battery raw material used in LFP batteries, which are now actually also growing their market share as we speak. So let's see that once Sookli goes forward, that will it be focused on fertilizers or batteries. Time will tell. Then if we go to the next slide, we have the whole value chain here, and then obviously now through these current assets, we are well positioned here in the beginning of the value chain on raw materials and chemicals, and our strategy has all the time been that we want to go forward in the value chain to the production of intermediates like precursors and cathode active materials, and eventually to cells as well. And then when we talk about this value chain, we cannot forget recycling either. And then this is the strategy that we have been executing, and I think that it is fair to say that now we are having tangible results here. And on the next slide, we have even in a little bit more detailed manner map of these current projects, greenfield investment project in the value chain. And as you surely know, two of these projects are actually now located in Vaasa. So there is a collaboration with Johnson Matthey for cathode materials project located in GigaVaasa, and also partnership with FREYR for cell project that is actually the next plot there in GigaVaasa area. So we are obviously through these projects very strongly involved and present with GigaVaasa way of working forward. But I'm sure that colleagues from FREYR and Johnson Matthey will elaborate these projects. So I will perhaps jump into Kymenlaakso area, Hamina and Kotka. So there we have also two projects. First of all, a precursor project together with Chinese GNGR, which is perhaps not so well-known company here in Europe, but within the industry, very well known and appreciated company, as it is basically the largest precursor producer in China currently. And we also have a cathode active materials project in Kotka. These projects are obviously located quite closely quite close to each others, and then there is a good possibility that these projects will collaborate with each others, but basically still these are independent investments, and obviously we are now excited with the progress, how these projects are going forward, and we hope to see final investment decisions within next few months. But this is now basically the kind of like introduction that where we are with our work currently, and then if we then go forward and to the kind of like actual topic of today and to the sustainability, we have on the next slide the start of the kind of like the next section of the presentation, and then if we take one slide forward, we see the kind of like table showing that how the kind of like CO2 footprint of this industry evolves, and I made the kind of like a decision here that now that we speak about sustainability and then because it's such a broad topic, I will focus on CO2 footprint, because that is obviously one of the most important sustainability aspects within this industry, and then something that we perhaps, at least in my mind, we perhaps here in Finland sometimes do not appreciate enough, that how good we are here, and how important this actually is. So the basic message here is that now that the automotive industry is switching to EVs, we are kind of like facing a situation where it is not that important anymore, or it doesn't play that kind of role anymore, that what is the emissions of vehicles once they are on the road, because obviously the whole idea here is to reduce those emissions, and with green energy we can basically have a zero emission traffic on the road. But now what we need to focus on is that what is the CO2 footprint of the production of those vehicles itself. And here we have an example that how, for example, Volkswagen ID3 and Volkswagen Golf, that how those compare with their CO2 footprint, and we can see that ID3, which is an electric vehicle, has almost double CO2 footprint compared to old-fashioned Golf. And this obviously means that now that the penetration of EVs is growing rapidly, that this new industry will cause new CO2 emissions. And once we go forward, and once this market goes forward, this is becoming more and more important topic, and more work that needs to be done to reduce and mitigate these emissions from the production itself. And then if we take a look on nickel, the fact here is that the big portion of that excess or new nickel production that is needed to satisfy the demand of EVs will become from such sources which do not have that good CO2 footprint as the average production today has. And this basically means that there will be challenges to procure kind of like a green nickel for the use of this industry, and the producers of EVs will focus more and more attention to these questions. But from our perspective, this is actually quite a, let's say, interesting position and interesting development, because then on the next slide we see that where we are here. So this picture here is the global nickel producers CO2 ranking. And here we can actually see that Terrafame is on the pole position. And I think that this is actually quite quite well. This is even kind of like a little bit surprising, but this is the situation where we are, and this is obviously something that is now benefiting us and Finland and Nordics quite a bit. So, and this is obviously just the one example. There are a few reasons why Terrafame is so good here. I don't have time to go deeper into those reasons, but one reason there obviously is the low CO2 footprint of Finnish and Nordic energy, and that is obviously benefiting others in the Nordics as well. Let's then jump to the next and last slide here in my presentation. So this is basically the summary, trying to wrap this up. So there are like a couple of key learnings here. So first being that the way how we think about CO2 emissions in traffic needs to change, so that we cannot focus on to these so-called tank to fuel emissions only anymore, but we need to take a wider look and take into account the whole value chain and the production of raw materials and intermediates. Green energy is extremely important here. We need to be able to provide it to these new investments that are being built up here, and we need to do that in an affordable price. And obviously industry itself needs to play its role as well and minimize the energy consumption anywhere it can do that. Then the kind of like a second point here is that all of this information that we have on the sustainability of raw materials, CO2 footprint of raw materials and so forth, it is as such very interesting, but it doesn't have any effect unless the end customer is aware of that. So we need traceability, and obviously I'm sure that the whole industry is now kind of like looking forward that how this new European legislation on batteries, what type of like requirements it will entail, and then what it means for the kind of like a reporting and traceability of raw materials. And it will be obviously important for the industry, but at the same time, obviously, we cannot only wait for legislation, but we need to do our part and then be well prepared, so that we have all the systems in place, so that we can kind of like deliver the message of sustainability all the way from the mines and other raw material sources to the end customer through the value chain, so that when the customer goes to the dealership and then buys a new EV, that there is information available that how sustainable that EV eventually is, and I'm sure that will be our competitive advantage. So thank you for the attention, and if there is any time for questions, I'm happy to try and give an answer.
Thank you, Matti, for updating what is happening in Finland, and what a great job you have done. I have two short questions. One is coming from the audience. Which raw materials are available in Nordic? And second one, if we go in the beginning of battery value chain in Finland, and have a look at the battery minerals, especially lithium production, what are the next steps?
Thank you. So if we start with the first one, I think that basically the answer is that all. So basically in the Nordics, you have basically all the key battery raw materials: nickel, cobalt, manganese, graphite, and so forth. So and obviously copper as well. So basically all the raw materials are here. But at the same time, I think that it's fair to say that we won't be able to satisfy the whole demand that Europe will have, but we need external production as well. And with lithium, which is obviously also available here, I think that obviously now we are expecting that when we will hear good news from more good news from Keliber with their process and development. And obviously, like I said, the intention is that after a couple of years, Keliber will be in a position to start its production. So we are obviously eagerly waiting for that.
Very good. Thank you so much. Two international companies have recently signed significant letters of intent for battery investments in the region. The large investments in Finland have traditionally been followed by large infrastructure packages. Our next presentation is about towards carbon neutral logistics. I warmly welcome Minister of Transport and Communications, Mr. Timo Harakka. Welcome.
Thank you very much. To be sure of the communications, can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Dear friends, it is inspiring to be involved in this event, promoting the emergence of a sustainable Finnish battery value chain. The issues addressed in today's webinar are very important from the perspective of the Ministry of Transport and Communications. In the first place, the clean transport of the future will largely rely on electric solutions in which batteries will play a fundamental role. Also, the other part of my portfolio is very much dependent on battery life, communications, and particularly mobile communications. But let's concentrate in the former. The climate goals of Finland and the European Union are ambitious but necessary, bold but binding. The message from the world's leading experts is clear: fossil fuels must be phased out in order to curb climate change. Transport must also play its part in reducing emissions. The progress of emissions reductions in this sector had remained rather slow in global terms, but we are now approaching a revolution in which electrification will play a key role. Finland is on track to cut in half its domestic transport emissions by the year 2030. The most widely used alternative propulsion energy sources are currently liquid biofuels, such as ethanol and renewable diesel. Natural gas and biogas are also increasingly used as fuels in road transport. Use of electric power to road transport is also growing rapidly. Some statistics to illustrate this trend. 4 times as many fully electric passenger motor vehicles were registered in Finland by June of this year than a year earlier. While a total of about 3,000 fully electric and rechargeable hybrid motor vehicles were in service 5 years ago, this figure has risen to about 82,000 by the end of June this year. A clear upward revision of forecasts has been possible concerning the number of electric cars and the consequent reduction in emissions, and further guidance measures could increase these figures even more. As we all know, this summer the European Commission adopted a legislative package in pursuit of ambitious EU climate targets, including several proposals on transport. The Commission proposals assign particular prominence to the electrification of passenger cars as a guiding principle. The proposals include a 55% cut in emissions from newly sold cars and vans by the year 2030 and a 100% cut by the year 2035. The automotive industry would accordingly only be permitted to manufacture passenger motor vehicles with specific emissions of 0 grams per kilometer as of 35. In practice, this would mean only manufacturing all electric or fuel cell cars. It will also have a significant impact on the European and Finnish motor vehicle fleet in the current decade. There would be an inevitable impact on the demand for batteries used in electric vehicles as well. So we here at the transport sector are creating the demand that the battery industry will supply. And if you allow a little wordplay, increasing demand will also make us consumers more demanding. We want ecological and ethical batteries for our EVs. Critical minerals need to be extracted in a process of sustainable mining. The construction of and chemical processes must be as clean as possible. And at the other end of the life cycle, batteries need to be recycled and reused as efficiently as possible. In life cycle sustainability, I think Finland is ideally positioned to produce ecological and ethical batteries for the planet. Dear friends, electrification is developing slower in heavy road transport vehicles than in passenger transport. The largest heavy goods vehicles will not be electrically powered for a long time. Maritime and long-haul aviation remain challenges as well. However, even for heavier goods transport by road and off-road, electric power is nevertheless no longer a utopian dream, but a real and continually advancing option. Indeed, battery power is an entirely feasible future source of propulsion energy for shorter journeys, even in aviation. With respect to haulage, on the other hand, electrically powered drones are envisioned as a transport option for the last kilometer, meaning when the consignments are transferred from larger haulage units to the final recipient. Use of electric power is currently becoming more common in city buses and delivery services. The main reason for using electric power in these modes of transport is its low cost, particularly on maintenance. We are continually reading good news, for example, concerning new electric vehicle procurements by bus companies. Climate issues aside, the benefits of electrifying heavier transport systems in urban areas include reducing air pollution and noise. Our new clean vehicle procurement legislation took effect in August. The new law requires municipalities and the state to ensure a certain proportion of zero and low emission vehicles when making new public procurements. We can expect to see an increase of low emission public transport over the next few years. Dear webinar participants, Finland's national measures for reducing road transport emissions are set out in the Roadmap for Fossil-Free Transport, a government resolution on reducing emissions from transport which was adopted in May. Subsidies, incentives to promote zero-emission transport are viewed as key measures in the first phase of the roadmap. Procurement subsidies can accelerate replacement of the motor vehicle fleet with electric and gas-powered vehicles for use in both passenger transport and goods haulage. Investing in the charging and distribution infrastructure is also essential. The lack of home charging point is one of the key obstacles to the wider spread of electric cars. For this reason, it's important to direct subsidies towards building a private charging infrastructure. Public charging points are also needed. We anticipate increasing market support for charging point construction in the latter half of the decade as vehicles using new propulsion solutions become more common in our roads. Heavier vehicles, in particular, will also require the development and spread of efficient chargers. Besides the need for Finland to continue investing in further development of the diversified battery industry value chain, Finnish providers may also have a great deal to offer to developing charging solutions elsewhere. With the society of the future increasingly reliant on electric power, smart charging solutions will also become more vital and increasingly possible. For example, cars may be guided to recharge at times when plenty of renewable electric power is available on the grid. Future car batteries may correspondingly boost the electricity grid when they are not in service. We certainly cannot even begin to imagine all of the solutions that will open up to us and to which Finnish engineering expertise can also provide new approaches. Dear friends, to conclude, as we all know, the Vaasa region is the epicenter of a sustainable energy cluster, or as I prefer to say, a vital part of the climate industry ecosystem. I admire the advanced digitization and datafication of processes across the board, which is the absolute critical factor in reaching our climate targets. And coming back to the second part of my portfolio, which concerns digital networks and data economy, if emissions-reducing technology, be it propulsion, fuels, vehicles, and vessels, will make our carbon footprint smaller, the smart data solutions that govern these technologies and often replace the need to produce emissions in the first place, they in turn make our positive handprint bigger. Incidentally, the Finnish government has produced the ICT climate strategy position paper, which I believe to be the first in the world. Due to extensive interest in several countries, it's available also in English in the government website. Innovation and cooperation are the strengths of Vaasa region. I'm proud to be involved in our common endeavor to promote bold and binding climate targets and an ecological and ethical battery value chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Harakka. I will certainly buy this term climate industry ecosystem. There are also one question for you, Mr. Harakka. We are creating now circumstances for sustainable battery value chain and sustainable driving. What type of infrastructure improvements do we need to guarantee these investments to Finland? What do you think?
Thank you for the question. And obviously, what we need for the first time is investment. So to secure these investments, we need to work. And I was privileged to be the first minister in the Ministry of Economics and Employment when Matti, who spoke previously, presented the first draft of the investments on ecological and ethical mining of battery chemicals, minerals and parts of the value chain that he just presented. And so it was a great moment for us to realize this dream of becoming a small battery superpower. I also referred to the chicken and egg problem, which has to do with electric driving, electric vehicles and charging. And obviously, we need to put a huge investment also in charging infrastructure. So I hope that we have both the industry infrastructure for attracting investment and also the demand infrastructure for the consumer side. So both supply and demand need to be incentivized.
Very good. Thank you so much and have a nice day.
Thank you.
We will continue our program. Our next speaker is eager to find sustainable solutions to climate change and energy sector. She is looking for more investments in research and knowledge through the European cooperation. As a member of European Parliament representing Finland, Miapetra Kumpula-Natri is bringing us the greetings from the EU Parliament.
Thank you for the opportunity to join you in Vaasa today. And I'm really literally bringing the greetings from the European Parliament and today physically from Strasbourg on my not that fancy working room as the session takes place in the plenary hall at the very same time. This morning, European Parliament had a debate with the Vice President Timmermans on 55 package, Fit for 55 package, under the circumstances of the IPCC report. And it became very clear that the European Parliament stands strongly with the Commission and Vice President Timmermans on the line that we want to be climate neutral continent by 2050. And we want to be fit for the future, fit for 55. And also their parliament is a little bit pushing to call it at least 55. So in these circumstances, it's actually hard work nowadays to find all the regulations and financing and programs going on that relates to the battery production, usage, demand, and so, because it's getting so vital importance. At the same time, we see the digitalization and we see the electrification, and both should meet the climate targets. We can see that the demand for the sustainably produced batteries is very much in the core to answer the needs that is posed in so many different sectors. I will not touch the transport, as that was so well described by the previous speaker, Minister Harakka, but then also remind that batteries can be used, recycled in the using, but then also the materials later, but then also how they are be able to help the sustainability of the electricity nets and then provide more inclusiveness of the renewable energy sources. So this morning, the Fit for 55 package was only the launching again the idea that we will need this very broad package, which for me resembled the work we did last mandate. First criticism that was all too soon, that we will revise the old legislation that hardly came into the power. But then we see at the same time that the science didn't stop pressuring us, that if we want to fight the climate, we will have to update our legislation. So it can't be that we only change the goal, but do not change the legislation. So the Fit for 55 package, you can count at least 13 legislative proposals. So I will not show them all on the screen here, but then just to mention few that how they even link to the needs and demands for the batteries. If we talk about the ETS and the price, we know that everything have to be very precise on the energy and electricity. So then we can talk about the different forms of the transport, ETC for aviation, car CO2 emission regulation, renewable and low carbon maritime fuels, but you don't actually need that much fuels if you have very good batteries and electrified systems in the short distance ships, for example. Also the effort sharing regulation touches the pressure on the traffic, and of course the Renewable Energy Directive and Energy Efficiency Directive are answered with the electrified systems. So, but then also the other side that we all believe that the demand is high, is that how we produce the system. We know the fact that we started also from the idea which was more industrial, as mentioned by the previous speakers here as well. So it was the fact that we know demand will grow and then we will import so big share of the batteries used in Europe from Asia mainly. So could we create jobs? Could we create more battery production in the European continent too? And then it is that if we produce them, why not take also the sustainability on board? So not to establish our own production for the old type of investments or of batteries, but then take it right from the design phase, that they could be recyclable, they could be concentrated on the better usage of the materials, and then also include the sustainability in the every phase of the production, usage and recycling. So I also happen to know Vaasa region quite well, and then the Nordic energy market. So I think it's a huge advantage for us that in the Nord Pool you can find electricity over 90% emission free, and that's really one worth of mentioning why the region should have all these investments there. If life cycle analysis is carried on, it will be important that the electricity factories use is emission free as well. And then also the region with the very closely linked to the Nordic neighbors in the regions, and then also to the mining resources and raw materials we have from the region, shows that this is actually what European Union wants to do in the bigger scale. It's happening in the local scale. We are now talking. So I very much appreciated that this seminar had a speaker from EBA, because he brought it very well on the papers, all the legislative work we are doing. But I want to underline here that it's not just legislation, not even just funding, but the whole big picture and strategy where we want to see European battery production and use it to be able to answer in the sustainable way. On the finance, I also want to hope and see that Finland is actively using the possibilities to use the funding provided whether via the EBA and InnoEnergy structures, but also directly from some sources of Horizon Europe. If not for the research, then at least for some pilot projects. And then also the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which was then distributed nationally. So the lobby Finnish government that they also want to set their heart on this innovative and concrete results that these surroundings in Vaasa region and then the Nordic cooperation can be flowering when we need the future jobs in the regions, and then at the same time solving the global challenges that we are solving here with these structures we have. I do nowadays not only work in the ITRE committee, which is Energy, Innovations and Industry and Digitalization, but I also work in the INTA committee, which is international trade. So just some remarks that what will you all expect. So the trade policy is also developing. It's not all that Europe wants alone, but we're seeing the global situation there. And European Union also wants to develop its own climate policies so that the leakages do not happen, that we only set regulations in Europe and then see emissions growing somewhere else. So the new due diligence reporting proposal, we waited the Commission to give before the end of the year. So then that would then add transparency on the emissions, on human rights, like the labor rights, and then of course the climate goals needs to be involved in any trade agreement European Union is ready to make. So it also sets the standards that we do not want to see the carbon leakages. There is also the CBAM regulation coming, carbon border adjustment mechanism, as in the Fit for 55 package. So this is not to forget that the emissions are global and not only in the European Union. Also the pandemic, but also maybe more intense trade relations set our interest on the secure supply chains. And there also, if more and more important places are electrified, it's very important that equipment and networks carrying electricity are very secure, and batteries can help that security as well. So all in all, I want to finish my input here thanking the organizers. As I spent half of my year in the local city council, this is the city I know best, and then the projects and the will of the region has been there for more than 10 years. And now when I have more European perspective, I see that that is value itself. There is no demonstrations that not to set industrial sites close to city, but other way around. Vaasa citizens and people from Nordic countries in general see the role for the handprint. The technology needs to help our big goal, solving the climate challenge set there. And then if also the title today was about the Nordic region doing that together, we have to say that in the European perspective, it is the Nordic countries delivering quicker so that the 2050 can be reached. If we have the Finnish goal being the climate neutral by 2035, the Danes are near, Sweden is pushing, and also we know Norway ambition on the climate issues. It is very right place that we see actions happening. So when we saw the map for the battery productions and sites in Europe, I think the Nordic will deserve having more points on our plans as resources, raw materials, knowledge, and the political will to be sustainable lives here with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miapetra, for your effort, and also I want to thank you for the great job you have done in Brussels. One question also for you. I had one from the audience, but you already answered to that question. How do you see competition of battery establishments between different countries in EU? You can see things from the helicopter perspective. So what do you see this thing?
First of all, I think I can refer the PowerPoint show earlier here with the InnoEnergy EBA, that actually even the plans and hopes, they are not fulfilling the demand that Europe has in the batteries. So there is a good way to invest more and then answer the needs and then the supply for the demand. On the other hand, I know that RRF, the Resilient Recovery Fund, also brings all together 750 billion, and you need to invest more than 38% for the climate issues and 20% for the digitalization. We know many countries use this money also for battery sector, which is okay. Of course, it's not easy for the country without massive resources, because we are small and in Finland, and we also are positive in our economy. We have taken care of the state economy and loans for a long time, so we do not have a massive amounts in these resources, and there is a risk that some competition would be difficult for a country like Finland against the country that can bring along a lot of European money. But I say, I maybe repeat that if the competition is a little bit forward-looking, not many countries can offer energy-free electricity for the production side, and then the network we have from the start to end. We have raw materials, refining, processing, manufacturing possibilities, and recycling is taking already very good steps. So as a normal Nordic person, I think the competition is good and we manage with our expertise. But we have to look that also the European-wide resources are well distributed, so that the investments do not go somewhere which are not the best places. But as I started with the positive note, demand is even bigger than the planned investments, so it's much room for everyone.
Thank you. Next, we will continue. About a month ago, we heard from the news that FREYR Battery has chosen Vaasa as a location for potential cell plant in Finland. For Finland and for the region, this is a logical next step, making the whole battery value chain possible. It can be seen significant synergies with all made commitments and existing companies in the region. We also see great potential for Nordic battery belt development together with FREYR. But let us hear more about this next generation battery cell production. Arve Haugan, Chief Operating Officer and Deputy Chief Executive Officer, FREYR Battery. Please, the audience is eager to meet you.
Hello, and you can hear me from Norway?
Yes, we can.
Thanks a lot. First of all, thanks a lot for a very good introduction, and I'm very honored to be together with this group of very competent people, and of course it's also quite an excitement to be part of the webinar today. So thanks for inviting us, and I'm happy to share some thoughts with you. So then I think my plan is today to give you an update on where we are in our development, and of course I also have to address back to Matti Hietanen of Finnish Minerals Group, who already have given you a pretty good background for why we are in Finland. And of course I will at the end I will also address the fact that we have a joint agreement with both the city of Vaasa and the Finnish Minerals Group on further development. But let me start with picking up a couple of the headlines that you already have talked about. So if you take the next slide, please. I think that most of the, could you say, the initiatives that you hear about makes it to the media when the EV market are addressed. And we've already heard about the opportunities and the potential already in the previous presentations. But we have also looked at other, could you say, market potentials, and we realized that not only based on the political initiatives, but also the fact that we see an energy transition across the different continents, and of course the US and Europe are leading, but also developing world is actually seeing an energy transition. And we realized that energy storage and service systems are rapidly growing. And since we, in a way, started the company and looking at the market opportunities, we have seen that the graph that I have picked up here now, and the blue market in particular, or the blue volume in particular, are actually growing half year by half year. So increasing demand in what we call then the energy storage and the service market. And I will address, of course, then also our technology that we have chosen, which is labeled the 24M technology, a spin-off of MIT in Boston, and developed in collaboration with a couple of other industrialized company in China. No, sorry, in Japan, in Thailand, and now lately in China. So based on this, we do see that on top of the EV market, there is a great opportunity for us to supply batteries to the ESS market. Next slide, please. So when FREYR was established and started to look at where should we focus, we highlighted then the core of the battery value chain, and in particular where we see the most value added. And that's where you convert the raw materials into cells. And obviously different markets will demand different types of products, but we also realize that for the ESS market, we need to install module and pack systems at the end or wall to wall to our factories. So that's part of the proposals that we have. And of course, I will address then the upstream part of raw material supply later in my presentation. But the most important message that we have, I would like to share with you now, is that the 24M technology is much easier, it's much less space demanding and less energy consuming compared to conventional technology, but it's also very strong technology to provide to the fast growing ESS market. So obviously there is a match here between the technology that we have and our competence, and of course the localization of the manufacturing capabilities in the Nordic region. So if you take the next one, I'm not going to spend much time on this, but we have agreed as a mission for ourselves that as a basic, could you say, factor for our ideas and opportunities is our sustainability profile. Secondly, we realize that in order to capture the market, we need to have enough speed. And of course, we see that in order to also compete in the cost competition, which is obviously an important part of the market understanding, we need to have scale in order to reduce the overall cost. And by our Nordic focus, of course, Norway has already been mentioned by the previous speaker, and the Nordic region, we do tick all of these boxes going forward. If you then take the next one, important factor is to be able to document where we are and where we are going to be. And a very important factor in our profiling the company and also marketing what we are going to deliver to the customers and also to the suppliers, we realize that targeting lower carbon footprint is a very important factor. We have realized that this has been a key driver for most of the customers going forward. And of course, if you then on top of that can reduce the cost, first of all by having an optimized execution of the capital expenditure development, but also high competence in the operational excellence, which is two important factors that we believe we contribute to the market. We believe that we can both reduce the carbon footprint from an average of 80 kilograms of CO2 equivalents per kilowatt hour of produced batteries down to 15 going forward. And of course, if an average of the cell cost produced before you put it into module and pack to be close to $80 per kilowatt hour, we believe that when we have full-scale operations, should be approaching approximately $62 per kilowatt hour. Of course, very dependent on the raw material prices, but of course, all of you know that. If you take then the next slide, we are looking at the opportunities to develop the organization and our manufacturing capabilities. Of course, it starts with the Norwegian operation, as that's our home turf, and I will address that in my last slide. But we do also realize that there is a strong driver in the industry for decarbonized and localized battery production. And we have reason to believe that that is a trend that is further growing into the industry, both for vehicles, electrical vehicles, but also for other industries where batteries are going to be the solution to the energy transition. And of course, for us, it is important both when it comes to the logistics, but also the responsibility of us being able to trace the raw materials from the cradle or from the mining industry and through our production and into the battery chain and to the supply or to the customers, but obviously also being prepared for recycling. And we do really see that recycling capabilities is a strong, competence, not only for the recycling in itself, but also actually for raw material circulation. Because obviously, if you can recycle the raw materials back to the batteries, it's an important factor going forward. And of course, this goes down to very important messages about environmental friendly production. So then for the next slide, please. We have agreed, as I already mentioned, an MOU with Finnish Minerals Group. And this was driven, first of all, by the fact that we saw that raw materials could be sourced in the Nordic region. And we realized that the competence and the profile, and then again, explained here by the CEO of FMG, gives us a very strong foothold and a focus, in particular in the Finland. And obviously, it's no difficulties when you see that Finland is part of the European Union. As probably you all know, Norway is not part of the EU, so we need to look at that as well. And when we then scrutinized different locations, both in Norway and in, of course, the Nordic region, we actually identified the location close to the city of Vaasa, where we now have made an agreement for an exclusive development together with the city of Vaasa for a big plot outside the city. And I think that this has been now very important, messages to the customers from our side, that this is opportunities that we are eager to explore, but we are, of course, dependent on customer traction, and that's now our main focus in order to prepare for the next steps. So by closing my presentation today, I think that the key takeaway from the market is, number one, that a year ago, everybody asked for low cost. Low cost was the name of the game. So then we realized over the last, say, 9 months, decarbonized value chain and low carbon footprint has been the first and most important question to most of the customers that we meet. Secondly, we also realize that due to the fact that the industry now is facing an increased growth of demand, we do see that more and more of the customers are actually asking for localized supply chain, localized production. And obviously, not only because of the logistics, but we also realize that in particular the Chinese politics are indicating clearly that the battery production in China will be consumed in inland China going forward. Not only to exporting cars, but also for decarbonizing the energy transition in China. Secondly, we realize that the competence and the skill set that we have in the Nordic or Scandinavian culture, in a way, with a highly educated workforce and also capabilities of industrializing and focusing on the improved operational excellence is a very strong contribution to the battery production capacities. And that's why we have said that speed, scale, and sustainability links together as part of the industrialized production. And last but not least, the third key takeaway from my side is that a Nordic supply chain, and in particular then in the cooperation and collaboration that we have now with the Finnish Minerals Group, looking at the opportunities, looking at how we can, as fast as possible, develop the supply chain in the Nordic region, not only to our plant that we are now developing in Norway, but also further opportunities is very, very important. So, but these three key takeaways, I think we have covered most of the topics today, but looking forward to if there are comments or questions. So if you please can look at the last page of my presentation, you have the link to our homepage and of course on our Twitter account. But last but not least, we are also recruiting, so the LinkedIn link is also very important to show for you. Thanks a lot for the attention.
Thank you, Jan Arve, for this interesting presentation, and welcome to Finland. Like you might guess, I have a question also for you. Let's talk about Nordic battery belt. It stretches from Finland, the cities of Vaasa and Kokkola, via Skellefteå in Sweden to Mo i Rana in Norway. What is the biggest advantage what battery belt can offer or bring to organizations, companies and operators in battery value chain? How do you see that?
I think I covered some of this in my presentation, but I think that the combination of to meet or to start with the political picture. We are of course part of the commitment to the Paris Agreement to reduce or to limit the energy or the temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And I do believe that the mass production capabilities that we have and the industrialization that we are able to contribute to this industry is a very strong and important factor. So from our side, we believe that the culture of the Nordic countries and the capabilities of, turning quite an advanced production technology into mass production and grow this into speed and scale is obvious. And then when you can build that on a sustainable, profile with low carbon footprint on pretty much everything that you contribute. And finally, not last but not least, if you can limit the logistics, it's obviously a stronghold for everybody. And that's why when we talk with our customers, but also with our clients or partners, this is the core of what we discuss with everybody. And we see that we get very strong traction with everybody when we meet both clients and customers and partners.
Thank you so much and have a nice day.
Thanks a lot.
We will continue to our last speaker. Johnson Matthey's vision is a world that is cleaner and healthier today and for future generations. But what is the path towards an electrified and sustainable future? Let us hear more about Johnson Matthey's high-performance cathode material offering. Please welcome Mr. Christian Ruediger, Strategic Partnerships and Government Affairs Director from Johnson Matthey Battery Materials. We have some technical issues, so let's wait for a second. Now we have Christian here. Welcome, Christian.
Hello. Hello from Frankfurt to Finland. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes, we had some technical problems, but now you are online. Please, welcome.
Thank you very much, and apologizing also for the technical issues. I think it's also linked to our side as well. So hopefully this works. If not, then I'm apologizing already in advance. Good. I'm happy to present today Johnson Matthey. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Christian Ruediger. I'm the Director for Strategic Partnerships and Government Affairs, working for Johnson Matthey Battery Materials. And today, it's the honor to present Johnson Matthey's high-performance cathode material offering and our vision towards an electrified and sustainable future. Next slide, please. When we are talking about the market, I would like to start with the automotive market first. And on this slide, basically, you find the key metrics and the key drivers until end of the decade. It's forecasted that in 2030s, we will have roughly 100 million units of global passenger cars globally, while the share of light-duty diesel is decreasing in Europe below 10% only. At the same time, the share of BEVs, so basically battery electric vehicles, will increase up to 30% globally. Furthermore, in the age around 2026, the last regulation on combustion engines will kick in with the Euro 7 and China 7 and possible US legislation. And furthermore, I think the majority of you is aware of that one, that some countries has announced already ICE bans for new passenger car sales, which is currently approximately 25% of the total market in 2030s. So basically, what we have ahead of us is a massive transformation from the current automotive industry, mainly from combustion engine, into electric vehicles. Next slide, please. When we are talking about battery electric cars, of course, we're talking about batteries, basically. And therefore, we also have to talk about the battery value chain. And my speakers have outlined already the major topic around that one in terms of sustainability. And today, I also want to talk about sustainability from a cathode manufacturing point of view, and would like to talk about the technology, the supply chain, and the process and manufacturing techniques we at Johnson Matthey are going to apply to meet the criteria on sustainability. Next slide, please. Johnson Matthey's vision, is it's for a world that's healthier and cleaner today and for future generations. So therefore, Johnson Matthey is applying our technology science, which is mainly around autocatalysts, fuel cell technologies, and battery materials to make a real difference for our customers and the world around us. Next slide, please. And this is exactly what I would like to talk about to you today. Basically about battery materials and our position in the value chain. On this slide, you see the traditional battery value chain, which is starting from mining over raw materials, battery material manufacturing, up to cell and pack level pack manufacturing, and finally supplying to the end customer, like automotive OEMs, which are using the batteries to build battery electric cars. End of the value chain, recycling is coming in to close the loop. Johnson Matthey's position in the value chain is highlighted in blue. Basically, we are a battery material supplier, mainly around cathode materials, but also anode materials. Our cathode material offering is one of the broadest in the industry, starting with a high nickel material offering, which we call eLNO. I will talk on a later slide about more detail about that one. But we also have LFP, so lithium iron phosphate, LMFP, and up to high voltage spinel cathode materials in our portfolio. High voltage spinel cathode materials is a very promising technology as well, so also known as lithium manganese nickel oxide. And in that one, we also have anode mix, and are focusing on recycling and have lately signed an agreement with Onto Technology for the direct recycling of lithium-ion battery scrap. Next slide, please. So what is eLNO? Basically, eLNO is a high nickel product, and it's not stands alone. It's basically a product family, and it's competing against the very advanced cathode material class, which is also known as NMC 811 or C955 or advanced NCA type of materials. What is basically the difference? The difference, first of all, is, or starting with the similarities, it's basically that it's also containing very high levels of nickel. So for eLNO, which is customizable to customer needs, we are usually talking around 90% nickel content. So the majority of the composition is nickel, but the rest of the composition is linked to other elements, how we are going to stabilize our chemistry. And you find that one also on that slide. We are working with different dopants and surface coatings technologies up to grain boundary enrichments, which uses cobalt, aluminum, and magnesium. And this is basically the difference comparing to now is clearly automotive science. So we are trying to ensure the highest possible capacity to increase the range of an electric vehicle, but we are also focusing on safety, so basically on thermostability of our materials. Furthermore, it's very important to improve capacity retention, because capacity retention is directly linked to the battery life. And the manufacturing has to be efficient and also sustainable. Next slide, please. When we are trying to commercialize our eLNO, we're usually working with our customers hand in hand. And therefore, we have invested in a battery technology center in Oxford. On this slide, I would like to give you some highlights. What are the capabilities of our BTC, Battery Technology Center, and how we're usually working together with our customers. On the left, you basically see the building. As said, this is located in Oxford, and this is containing one of the largest dry room facilities in the UK. From capability point of view, we are able to manufacture own batteries up to 1 to 2 ampere hours. So have everything in place from slurry formulation, mixing up to roll-to-roll coating, and finally automated cell building. In addition to that one, we have installed advanced characteristics for investigating cathode materials and interaction between cathode materials and other battery materials like the electrolyte, like the anode, to optimize the overall cell system. Of course, we're also using these technologies for post-mortem analysis as well. On the right, you're getting some impressions, but better than these pictures, I would like to recommend to go to Google and really trying to find our BTC Oxford, where we have a very nice video online. Next slide, please. Furthermore, collaborations and partnerships are key to our strategy. On this slide, basically, you find the recently announced partnerships in different areas like recycling, supply chain, technology, but also manufacturing. Today, I would like to talk about one particular relationship, which is helping in future to manufacture eLNO more cost efficient, but also more sustainable. Next slide, please. Therefore, I would like to talk today about Nano1, which is a Canadian startup, and may some of you heard about already about Nano1. Nano1 is basically a startup who has invented the so-called one-pot process, which is a more low-cost and more efficient process to manufacture cathode materials. The novel, let's say, technology is that a direct production from rare metals and lithium carbonate would be possible. At the moment, of course, this is still a study. So we are at the moment working on a commercialization, including pre-pilot, pilot, and scaled up manufacturing. But the target, and this is very important, is really to focus on low cost, but also sustainable eLNO generations in the future. Next slide, please. In terms of our eLNO manufacturing footprint, we are currently producing building 2 sites. One site is located in Poland, in Konin, where we are going to implement 10,000 metric tons eLNO capacity from end of 2022. In addition, we are manufacturing. So we are trying to build the manufacturer in Finland, Vaasa, which is connected to what was just highlighted also by my previous speaker. On the left right, you see the current picture of Konin and the construction process, where on the left you see where our future manufacturing locations are linked to gigafactories, which are recently announced. Next slide, please. So when we are also talking about E&O, we are trying to do that the manufacturing very sustainable. And therefore, you find on this slide our way to get to, at latest, to 2035 with a carbon neutral E&O manufacturing. At the moment, we have already implemented measures like responsible sourcing, critical raw material to mine, which are audited by RCS Global. Furthermore, we have announced already that both manufacturing plants we will start from day one with 100% renewable energy. In addition to that one, we also signed, like FREYR, a collaboration with FNG on a very novel technology to treat the byproduct, sodium sulfate, which is usually created as a byproduct during cathode manufacturing, but we do not want to dispose it into the sea. We want to recycle that one and offering a more sustainable way of cathode manufacturing. On top of that, we also heat recovery and other measurements to further reduce the carbon footprint of our manufacturing. Last but not least, the suppliers are key to reduce the CO2 footprint, and therefore we are working very close together with key raw material suppliers and on enhancing basically the sustainability standards together. Next slide, please. In terms of critical raw materials, we have selected two key material suppliers, not in terms only to secure volumes, also in terms of working on a very sustainable solution. On the left, you see SQM, which is our preferred lithium hydroxide supplier, because they are committed to reduce the carbon footprint in lithium till the end of 2030s. Beside that one, we have chosen non-nickel for nickel and cobalt supply, because they are also very committed to decrease the carbon footprint and the sodium oxide emissions in the next years. Basically, the raw materials are really the key measurements in reducing the carbon CO2 footprint. And therefore, it's very important to work very close together and implementing new technologies to reduce the CO2 footprint. Next slide, please. Last but not least, Johnson Matthey is also engaged in external institutions like the Global Battery Alliance, Cobalt Institute, or the European Raw Material Alliance. Johnson Matthey is very much supporting new ideas like the battery passport or tokenization of raw materials to really make a difference in manufacturing of battery materials. Next slide, please. Yeah, what are the key takeaways? Basically, the key takeaways you find in my presentation. I think it's really the duty of all of us to implement the right battery value chain from day one and do it in the right way. Therefore, I believe, and Johnson Matthey's belief is that we have to do it together, basically using partnerships, collaborations, and really focusing on a very sustainable approach to enhance sustainable battery manufacturing in future for electric cars and, of course, other applications. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christian. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
And
we are...
hopefully you could also hear me. And I'm also apologizing because I can't solve my presentation, so I did it from my mind.
Well, that's life, that's life. And we are also happy to have you here. Because this was last presentation, I have also last question, and because of it's the last one, it's also the easiest one. Like you might well know, we Finns are Formula One nation. Now, please tell us when will be the day we will see Formula One driven by electric cars?
Oh, this is a very good question because we are very much engaged already with Formula E. When I talk to Envision Racing, which is a Formula team, they're not that sure if Formula One and Formula E will really, let's say, merge. At the moment, we see already that Formula E is using batteries. Of course, still as a hybrid version of that one, but I further believe with the rapid increase of electric vehicles and the customer change, basically, we also will see more automotive sport, purely electric. If both are coming together, maybe, but honestly, I don't know. But I can only recommend Formula E. It's really a lot of fun to watch, and this is already complete 100% electric.
Very good. Thank you, and have a nice day. What an inspiring afternoon we have had. Sustainability, sustainability, and sustainability. That's almost all we need to remember when talking about Finnish and Nordic battery industries. That's a huge advantage we can offer to the rest of the world. And sustainability can be traced throughout the whole battery value chain, from the minerals, goods like electricity, water, to complete products and logistics of those. We can offer ecologically and economically reasonable low carbon footprinted batteries. Still, Finland should urgently make infrastructure investments in support of the battery strategy. The logistics map of batteries have some weaknesses. The national battery strategy should be also a roadmap for targeting infrastructure investments. Nordic Battery Belt is one of a kind. We together, Finland, Sweden and Norway, lead the way of sustainable battery production in the world. Building green batteries and battery materials requires the cooperation of the Nordic countries and the energy technology and chemical companies. And that is something we can. Game-changing new sustainable and clean technologies are also key to Europe's future, including in its ability to continue to be global economy and global actor. Now it's time to thank you all for joining us. A huge thanks also to our speakers. Thank you, sharing, for your thoughts. And you online, I will hope to see many of you live at Energy Week in Vaasa next March. Before that, have an energetic and nice autumn. Goodbye.